In the heart of a busy city where cars honked endlessly and people rushed by with their heads down, there was a man named Isaac. He was an ordinary man in many ways, kind-hearted, hard-working, and full of dreams. But today, Isaac felt anything but ordinary. Today he carried hope in one hand and fear in the other as he climbed the wide marble steps of the grandest building on the street, City Trust Bank. Isaac had spent months planning this day. He wanted to open a small grocery store in his neighborhood, a place where families could buy fresh vegetables, staples, and household items at fair prices. It wasn't just about making money. It was about giving back to the community that had supported him through thick and thin. For weeks, he worked late into the night, preparing every document the bank might need, his business plan, financial, projections, even letters of recommendation from local shopkeepers who believed in him. As he reached the top step, Isaac paused for a moment. His reflection stared back at him from the glass doors of the bank. He straightened his tie, smoothed out his shirt, and took a deep breath. "You've got this," he whispered to himself before pulling open the heavy door. Inside, the bank was bustling with activity. People stood in lines, chatting quietly or scrolling through their phones. Tellers behind polished counters greeted customers with practiced smiles. Isaac approached the reception desk, clutching his folder tightly. A young woman looked up at him, her expression polite but distant. "I'm here to speak with someone about a loan application," Isaac said, trying to sound confident despite the nervous flutter in his chest. The receptionist glanced at him briefly before replying. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Isaac admitted. "But I brought all my paperwork. I thought—" Before he could finish, she interrupted him gently but firmly. "Sir, we only see clients by appointment. You'll need to schedule something first." Her tone was professional, but Isaac couldn't shake the feeling that something else lingered beneath her words. He nodded slowly, disappointment already creeping in. "Okay, can I make an appointment now?" She tapped a few keys on her keyboard, then shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir. We're booked solid for the next 2 weeks." Isaac's shoulders slumped slightly, but he forced a smile. "All right, thank you." As he turned to leave, he noticed the way some of the other employees glanced at him, not with curiosity but with subtle discomfort. Their eyes seemed to linger too long on his skin, darker than most of the faces in the room. Walking back down those marble steps, Isaac tried to convince himself it was nothing. Maybe they were just strict about appointments. Maybe he'd misunderstood the looks. Yet deep inside, doubt began to creep in like a shadow stretching across the ground. Was it really because he didn't have an appointment? Or was there another reason why no one made eye contact when he spoke? That evening, as Isaac sat alone in his tiny apartment, staring at the stack of papers spread across his kitchen table, the weight of rejection pressed heavily on his chest. He replayed the scene over and over in his mind, searching for answers. Had he done something wrong? Was his dream not good enough? Or was it something more, a barrier invisible yet unyielding? Little did Isaac know, this moment would mark the beginning of a journey far greater than any loan application. What happened next would change not only his life but also the lives of those around him. The next morning, Isaac woke up before sunrise. The sun hadn't yet painted the sky with its golden hues, but sleep had abandoned him hours ago. His mind replayed the events at the bank like a broken record. Each time he thought about the cold reception and unspoken barriers, his chest tightened. Yet amidst the frustration, a small spark began to grow within him, a determination to prove that his dreams were valid, no matter what others thought. He decided to try again. This time, though, he wouldn't go unprepared. Over coffee, Isaac drafted a letter explaining his business plan in detail. He highlighted how his grocery store would serve the underserved families in his neighborhood, providing affordable goods, creating jobs, and fostering a sense of community. With every word, he poured his heart into the pages, determined to show that his vision was worth investing in. Later that day, Isaac returned to City Trust Bank. Clutching his neatly typed letter and updated documents, He walked confidently through the doors. To his relief, the receptionist allowed him to leave the envelope for review, assuring him someone would get back to him soon. As he stepped outside, Isaac felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this new approach would work. Perhaps persistence would pay off. But days passed, and there was no response. No phone call, no email, not even a rejection letter. It was as if his application had vanished into thin air. The silence gnawed at Isaac's resolve. Was it truly because of his color? Or was it something else entirely? Doubt crept back in, whispering cruel thoughts into his ear. One evening, while walking home from work, Isaac noticed a group of children playing near the corner store. Their laughter echoed through the streets, filling the otherwise quiet neighborhood with joy. Among them was a little girl holding an empty bag, her eyes scanning the shelves behind the counter. When she turned away disappointed, Isaac approached her gently. "Hey there," he said, kneeling down to her level. "What are you looking for?" "My mom sent me to buy rice," the girl replied softly, clutching the bag tighter. "But they don't have any left." Isaac frowned. How could such a basic necessity be unavailable in their own neighborhood? He glanced around at the dimly lit shops lining the street. Most were either closed or stocked with overpriced items nobody could afford. That's when it hit him. The problem wasn't just about his dream anymore. It was about addressing a glaring gap in his community. Determined to take action, Isaac began visiting other neighborhoods nearby. He observed how larger supermarkets operated efficiently, offering fresh produce and essential goods at reasonable prices. These stores thrived because they catered to people's needs. Why couldn't his neighborhood have the same? Inspired by what he saw, Isaac started sketching ideas late into the night. He envisioned a cozy yet modern space where neighbors could gather, not just to shop, but to connect. Shelves would be stocked with quality products sourced locally, ensuring affordability. There'd be a small section dedicated to handmade crafts from local artisans, giving them a platform to showcase their talents. And maybe, just maybe, he could even host weekly workshops for kids, teaching them skills like gardening or cooking healthy meals. Yet despite these exciting plans, one question lingered. How could he bring his vision to life without financial support? Isaac knew he couldn't rely solely on banks like Citi Trust. He needed another way, one that didn't depend on systems that seemed stacked against him. One afternoon, while browsing online, Isaac stumbled upon a crowdfunding platform. People shared stories similar to his, dreams dismissed by traditional institutions only to find success through grassroots efforts. Reading those stories reignited his hope. If others could do it, why couldn't he? With renewed energy, Isaac spent hours crafting a compelling campaign. He included photos of his neighborhood, testimonials from residents who supported his idea, and a heartfelt video explaining his mission. Every word carried sincerity. Every image told a story. By the time he clicked publish, Isaac felt both terrified and exhilarated. What if no one cared? What if his plea fell on deaf ears? To his surprise, within hours, donations trickled in. Small amounts at first, $10 here, $20 there, but each contribution felt like a vote of confidence. Strangers left encouraging comments, sharing how his story resonated with them. Friends and family rallied behind him, spreading the word far and wide. For the first time in weeks, Isaac felt seen, not as a man defined by his struggles, but as someone capable of making a difference. Still, Isaac knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Crowdfunding alone might not cover all his expenses, but, for now, he clung to the belief that even the smallest sparks could ignite change. Little did he know, his journey was about to intersect with unexpected allies who would help turn his dream into reality. As the days turned into weeks, Isaac's crowdfunding campaign gained momentum. The donations grew steadily, and his story began to spread beyond his immediate circle of friends and family. Local newspapers picked up on his efforts, publishing articles about the man trying to bring affordable groceries to an underserved neighborhood. One article even featured a photo of Isaac standing outside the empty lot where he hoped to build his store, smiling despite the challenges ahead. The attention brought something unexpected: support from unlikely places. One evening, as Isaac sat at his kitchen table reviewing updates from the campaign, there was a knock at his door. When he opened it, he found Mrs. Patel, the elderly woman who ran the small convenience store 2 blocks away. She carried a tray of homemade samosas, her wrinkled hands trembling slightly under the weight. "Isaac, my boy," she said warmly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I've been hearing about your project. I wanted to see how you're doing." Isaac blinked in surprise. While Mrs. Patel had always been kind, they weren't particularly close. He offered her a seat and thanked her for the food. As they sat together, she explained why she'd come. "You remind me of myself when I first started this little shop years ago," she said, gesturing toward the window as if her store were visible from his apartment. "People told me I couldn't do it, that no one would care about what I had to offer. But look at me now." She chuckled softly, though her eyes held a glimmer of pride. "Not much has changed around here since then. This neighborhood still needs people like you, people who believe in making things better." Mrs. Patel reached into her bag and pulled out a worn checkbook. With deliberate strokes, she wrote a figure that made Isaac's breath catch, a modest amount but enough to cover part of the initial costs for renting the space. "I may not have much," she admitted, handing him the check. "But every bit helps. And besides, I think your store will be good for business. Maybe we can work together someday." Tears welled up in Isaac's eyes as he accepted the gift. For so long he'd felt alone in this fight. Now someone else believed in him, not because of obligation or pity, but because they saw value in his vision. Word of Mrs. Patel's contribution spread quickly through the neighborhood. Soon others began reaching out to offer help. A retired carpenter named Mr. Thompson volunteered to assist with building shelves and fixtures once the space was ready. A young graphic designer named Sophia offered to create a logo and branding materials for free. Even the local church donated tables and chairs for the planned community events. But perhaps the most surprising ally came in the form of a woman named Elena Martinez. A former marketing executive who had recently moved to the area, Elena approached Isaac after reading about his campaign online. She introduced herself one afternoon while he was cleaning out the vacant lot where the store would eventually stand. I know a thing or two about getting people interested in projects like yours," she said, brushing stray leaves off her coat. "If you'll let me, I'd love to help you strategize." At first, Isaac hesitated. He wasn't used to accepting help from strangers, especially someone as polished and professional as Elena. But as they talked, he realized she genuinely cared about the cause. Over coffee, she shared ideas for expanding his reach, partnering with local schools, hosting pop-up markets, and leveraging social media to engage more people. With each new supporter, Isaac's confidence grew. What had started as a lonely battle against rejection was transforming into a collective effort, fueled by hope and determination. Still, doubts lingered in the corners of his mind. Could all these pieces really come together? Would his dream withstand the challenges that lay ahead? One evening, as Isaac walked home from the lot, he noticed a group of teenagers sitting on the curb nearby. They watched him curiously, whispering among themselves. One of them finally spoke up. "Hey, mister," the boy called out. "Is it true you're opening a grocery store here?" Isaac nodded, smiling. "That's the plan." The boy grinned back. "Good. We need one. My mom says the closest place is too expensive." Hearing those words reminded Isaac of why he'd started this journey in the first place. It wasn't just about proving himself to others. It was about creating something meaningful for people like this boy and his family, something that would last. Little did Isaac know, the next chapter of his story would test not only his resolve but also the strength of the bonds he was forging with his newfound allies. Together, they would face obstacles greater than any of them anticipated, but also opportunities they couldn't yet imagine. With the growing support from his community and allies, Isaac felt more optimistic than ever. The crowdfunding campaign had surpassed its initial goal, and donations continued to trickle in. Mrs. Patel's check, along with contributions from others, gave him enough to secure the lease for the vacant lot where his store would stand. Elena's. Marketing expertise helped spread awareness even further, attracting volunteers eager to help bring the project to life. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected challenge arose, one that threatened to derail everything. One morning, Isaac arrived at the lot to find a notice taped to the chain-link fence surrounding it. His heart sank as he read the words scrawled across the paper, "Cease operations immediately." Confused and alarmed, he quickly called the landlord who had agreed to rent him the space. "I'm sorry, Isaac," the landlord said over the phone, sounding uneasy. "I didn't want to do this, but I've received complaints from some of the neighboring businesses. They say your plans will disrupt the area and cause problems." Isaac couldn't believe what he was hearing. Disrupt the area. His entire mission was to improve the neighborhood, not harm it. He tried to reason with the landlord, explaining how the store would benefit everyone, but the man remained firm. Unless the complaints were resolved, Isaac would have to abandon the location. Frustration bubbled inside him as he hung up the phone. Who could possibly object to something so positive? Determined to get answers, Isaac visited the nearby shops to speak directly with the owners. Most avoided eye contact or claimed they knew nothing about the issue. But eventually one shopkeeper, a gruff man named Mr. Harris, spoke candidly. "It's not personal, Isaac," Mr. Harris said, leaning against his counter. "But change isn't always welcome around here. Some folks think your store will take customers away from existing businesses. Others, well, let's just say they don't like the idea of someone new shaking things up." Though Mr. Harris didn't elaborate, Isaac understood the unspoken implication. It wasn't just about competition. It was about who belonged in the neighborhood and who didn't. The weight of rejection settled heavily on his shoulders once again, reminiscent of his experience at City Trust Bank. Dejected but unwilling to give up, Isaac shared the news with his growing team of supporters. Elena immediately sprang into action, suggesting they organize a community meeting to address the concerns head-on. "We need to show people that this isn't about taking anything away. It's about adding value," she insisted. Mrs. Patel agreed, offering her store as a venue for the gathering. Flyers were distributed throughout the neighborhood, inviting residents to voice their opinions and learn more about Isaac's vision. On the night of the meeting, the small shop was packed with curious faces, young and old, longtime residents and newcomers alike. Isaac stood nervously at the front, clutching his notes. As he began to speak, he shared not only his business plan, but also his personal story, the struggles he faced, the dreams he nurtured, and the hope he carried for the future of their community. He spoke passionately about creating jobs, providing affordable goods, and fostering connections among neighbors. At first, the room was quiet, the audience listening intently. Then, slowly, people began to respond. A mother expressed gratitude for the prospect of fresh produce within walking distance. A teenager talked about wanting a safe space to hang out after school. Even Mr. Harris admitted, albeit grudgingly, that Isaac's intentions seemed genuine. However, not everyone was convinced. One man, a property owner whose building housed several struggling businesses, voiced his skepticism loudly. "How can we trust that you won't drive us out of business?" he demanded. "What guarantees do we have?" Isaac hesitated, unsure how to respond. Before he could answer, Elena stepped forward. "What if we work together?" she suggested. "Instead of competing, why not collaborate? For example, we could feature locally made products in the store, giving exposure to existing businesses, or host joint events to draw more foot traffic to the area." The room buzzed with murmurs as people considered her proposal. Though tensions lingered, a tentative agreement emerged. Isaac would revise his plans to include partnerships with local businesses, and in return, they would withdraw their objections. As the meeting concluded, Isaac felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The road ahead still held challenges, but he now had something invaluable, a community willing to listen, adapt, and work together. Little did he know, this compromise would pave the way for even greater opportunities and deeper bonds than he'd imagined. The days following the community meeting were a whirlwind of activity. Isaac threw himself into revising his plans, determined to honor the agreements made with the local businesses. With Elena's guidance, he drafted a proposal that emphasized collaboration over competition. The store wouldn't just be his, it would belong to the entire neighborhood, a shared effort to uplift everyone involved. One of the first steps was reaching out to the property owner who had voiced concerns during the meeting. Isaac visited him personally, bringing along sketches of how the store could incorporate locally made goods into its inventory. He explained how this partnership could benefit both parties, increased visibility for the smaller businesses, and a wider variety of products for customers. To Isaac's relief, the man nodded thoughtfully, though his expression remained guarded. "I'll think about it," he said after a long pause. "But I need to see real action, not just promises." Isaac understood. Trust wasn't something that could be built overnight, especially in a community where suspicion often ran deep. Determined to prove his sincerity, he began visiting other local business owners one by one. He sat down with bakers, artisans, and even Mr. Harris, discussing ways they could contribute to the store while benefiting from increased exposure. Slowly but surely, skepticism began to give way to cautious optimism. Meanwhile, work on the physical space continued. Mr. Thompson, the retired carpenter, arrived early each morning armed with tools and an unshakable enthusiasm. Together with a group of volunteers, including teenagers from the neighborhood eager to learn new skills, they transformed the empty lot into a functional structure. Walls went up, shelves were installed, and fresh coats of paint brightened the once dreary interior. Sophia, the graphic designer, worked tirelessly on branding materials. She created vibrant posters promoting the store's mission: fresh choices, stronger community. Her designs captured the essence of unity and progress, inspiring pride among those who saw them plastered around the neighborhood. Even Mrs. Patel pitched in, using her connections to secure discounted prices on basic supplies like flour and rice for the store's opening inventory. As word spread about these developments, more people joined the effort. A local farmer offered to supply fresh produce at reduced rates, ensuring affordability for low-income families. A teacher volunteered to organize weekly workshops for children, teaching them about nutrition and sustainability. Each contribution, no matter how small, added another brick to the foundation Isaac was building. But amidst all the progress, challenges persisted. Funding gaps loomed large as costs mounted faster than expected. Though the crowdfunding campaign had been successful, it wasn't enough to cover everything. Supplies needed to be purchased, permits finalized, and utilities set up, all requiring money Isaac didn't have. One evening, exhausted and overwhelmed, Isaac sat alone in the half-finished store, staring at the piles of materials scattered around him. Doubt crept back in, whispering cruel reminders of past failures. What if he couldn't pull this off? What if the weight of expectations crushed him before the doors even opened? Just then, Elena walked in, carrying a thermos of coffee. She handed him a cup and sat beside him, sensing his turmoil. "You're doing incredible work, Isaac," she said gently. "But you don't have to carry this burden alone. Let us help shoulder it." Her words struck a chord. For so long, Isaac had tried to prove himself, to show the world he was capable without relying on anyone else. But now, surrounded by people who genuinely believed in him, he realized strength lay not in going it alone, but in leaning on others. Inspired by this realization, Isaac decided to host a fundraising event, a community dinner aimed at raising additional funds while strengthening ties among neighbors. Everyone pitched in. Mrs. Patel cooked traditional dishes, Sophia designed invitations, and the teenagers helped set up tables and chairs in the lot next to the store. On the night of the event, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Families gathered under string lights, sharing laughter and stories as plates of food were passed around. Local musicians played soft melodies, adding warmth to the chilly evening. At the center of it all stood Isaac, humbled by the outpouring of support. When the final tally came in, the amount raised exceeded expectations. More importantly, the event reinforced the sense of community Isaac had hoped to build. a reminder that together they could overcome any obstacle. Little did Isaac know the next chapter of his journey would test not only his ability to adapt, but also his capacity to inspire others when faced with adversity. The road ahead still held surprises and lessons that would shape him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. As the opening day of Isaac's store approached, excitement in the neighborhood reached a fever pitch. Flyers adorned lampposts and bulletin boards announcing the grand opening with bold letters. Unity Market, fresh choices, stronger community. Volunteers worked tirelessly to put the finishing touches on the space, arranging shelves, stocking goods, and decorating the storefront with colorful banners designed by Sophia. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected storm hit, not in the skies but in the form of bureaucratic red tape. A city inspector arrived unannounced one afternoon, clipboard in hand, and began scrutinizing every detail of the building. By the end of his visit, he delivered devastating news. Several permits were missing, and without them, the store couldn't legally open. Isaac felt the ground shift beneath him. He had followed all the guidelines, or so he thought, but apparently some paperwork had slipped through the cracks. The inspector gave him a week to resolve the issues or face fines that would cripple the project entirely. Panic set in as Isaac scrambled to understand what went wrong. Elena accompanied him to city offices, navigating labyrinthine processes and endless queues. They discovered that one permit required approval from multiple departments, each with its own set of requirements. It was a daunting task, made worse by the looming deadline. Back in the neighborhood, rumors spread quickly about the delay. Some supporters grew disheartened, fearing the dream might never come true. Others whispered doubts, wondering if Isaac had bitten off more than he could chew. Even Mrs. Patel, who had always been unwavering in her support, looked worried when Isaac visited her shop to share the news. "I know you can fix this," she said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. "But sometimes even the strongest bridges need extra pillars to hold them up." Her words stayed with Isaac as he returned to the store late that night. Sitting, amidst half-packed boxes and unfinished displays, he replayed the challenges in his mind. How could he possibly solve such a complex problem in just 7 days? Exhaustion weighed heavily on him, but surrender wasn't an option. Not after everything everyone had sacrificed to get this far. The next morning, Isaac called a meeting with his core team. Gathered around a folding table in the back of the store, they strategized ways to tackle the issue. Elena suggested dividing responsibilities among the group. While she handled communication with government officials, others could focus on gathering necessary documents or reaching out to local leaders for advice. Mr. Thompson took charge of reviewing construction-related permits, ensuring every nail and beam met safety standards. Sophia used her design skills to create clear, professional diagrams illustrating compliance with regulations, a move that impressed even the skeptical inspectors during follow-up visits. Meanwhile, Isaac reached out to influential figures in the community, including pastors, teachers, and activists, asking for their help in advocating for the project. One breakthrough came unexpectedly when a city councilwoman named Ms. Alvarez heard about Isaac's plight. Moved by his story and the overwhelming support from residents, she intervened on his behalf, expediting certain approvals and smoothing over bureaucratic hurdles. Her involvement not only saved precious time but also validated the importance of Isaac's mission. Despite these efforts, the final hurdle remained: securing funding to cover the fees associated with obtaining the permits. With no other options left, Isaac decided to make a personal appeal to the community. Standing outside the nearly completed store, he addressed a small crowd of neighbors who had gathered to check on progress. "I won't lie to you," he admitted, his voice steady, despite the lump in his throat. "We're facing a challenge right now, but I believe in this store, not because it's mine, but because it's ours. Together, we've come so far. If each of us can contribute even a little bit more, we'll cross this finish line together." His honesty struck a chord. Within hours, donations poured in. Not large sums, but enough to cover the remaining costs. People handed over cash, wrote checks, and even offered items they hoped could be sold in the store once it opened. The collective effort was a testament to the trust Isaac had earned and the faith people placed in his vision. By the end of the week, every permit was secured, every fee paid. As Isaac stood inside the fully stocked store on the eve of the grand opening, he marveled at how far they'd come. What had started as a solitary dream had grown into a shared reality, one built on resilience, collaboration, and hope. Little did Isaac know, the true test of his journey would come not from external obstacles, but from within himself. Opening. The doors was only the beginning. Keeping them open would require courage, humility, and an unwavering commitment to the people who believed in him. The morning of the grand opening dawned bright and clear, as if the sun itself was celebrating. Alongside the neighborhood, Isaac woke early, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. He walked to Unity Market before sunrise, stepping inside the store that had become a labor of love for so many. The shelves were neatly arranged, stocked with fresh produce, canned goods, handmade crafts, and locally sourced products. Colorful banners hung from the ceiling, and a warm glow filled the space, inviting anyone who entered to feel at home. By the time the doors opened, a line of eager customers stretched down the block. Families, friends, and neighbors gathered outside, chatting animatedly about what this moment meant for their community. Children clutched balloons tied to the fence posts, while volunteers handed out flyers and samples of baked goods donated by local businesses. It wasn't just a store opening. It was a celebration of unity, resilience, and collective effort. As Isaac stood behind the counter, greeting each person who walked through the door, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Mrs. Patel beamed, proudly, directing shoppers to the spices she had helped source. Mr. Thompson leaned against a shelf, watching teenagers assist elderly customers carry their bags. Elena snapped photos for social media, capturing the joy radiating from every corner of the room. And Sophia's designs, now displayed on posters and product labels, added a touch of creativity that made the space uniquely theirs. Throughout the day, people shared stories about how Unity Market had already impacted their lives. One mother tearfully thanked Isaac for providing affordable staples her family desperately needed. A young artist showed off his handmade jewelry, now showcased in the store's artisan section. Even Mr. Harris, the skeptical shopkeeper, stopped by to congratulate Isaac, admitting that the store might actually bring more customers to the area after all. But amidst the celebrations, Isaac couldn't ignore the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Running a business wasn't just about opening doors, it was about keeping them open. He knew challenges would arise, unexpected expenses, difficult decisions, moments when doubt might creep back in. Yet standing there surrounded by the people who believed in him, he realized something profound. He wasn't alone anymore. That evening, as the crowd thinned and the volunteers began cleaning up, Isaac stepped outside to take it all in. The once empty lot now buzzed with life, laughter echoing through the streets. Across the way, he noticed a group of children playing near the curb, their faces lit by the fading sunlight. Among them was the little girl who had inspired him months ago, the one sent to buy rice but returned empty-handed. This time she smiled and waved, holding a bag of groceries she'd picked up earlier. Isaac waved back, a lump forming in his throat. In that moment, he understood the true purpose of his journey. It wasn't about proving himself or overcoming rejection. It was about creating something meaningful, something that could nurture and sustain the people around him. Unity Market wasn't just a store. It was a promise kept, a testament to the power of perseverance, collaboration, and hope. As the stars began to twinkle above, Isaac locked the doors for the night, feeling both exhausted and fulfilled. Inside, he left a note taped to the register. For the team, we did it. But this is only the beginning. Over the weeks and months that followed, Unity Market became more than just a place to shop. It became a hub for the community, a safe space where neighbors connected, children learned new skills, and dreams took root. Isaac continued to face challenges, but with each obstacle, he grew stronger, leaning on the network of supporters who had stood by him from the start. Looking back, Isaac realized that his journey hadn't been about changing others' perceptions of him. It was about changing his own perception of what was possible. Through courage, humility, and faith in the goodness of those around him, he had transformed not only his life but also the lives of countless others. In the end, Unity Market stood as a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, a single spark of determination could ignite change far greater than anyone imagined.